So we have some more fine details on the $600 billion Republican stimulus bill that was kind of unveiled on Sunday, and then we received some more details late on Monday, and I wanted to compare the individual items to the $1.9 trillion Biden stimulus proposal. That way you can formulate an opinion as to which is your favorite, what you like, what you don't like, and then after that, we're going to show a short clip, a 2-minute clip of a top Biden administration official and his opinion on paring down a stimulus bill and making it more targeted. So first, we have that $1.9 trillion Biden stimulus package proposal, and this has a wide range of different areas that it addresses, from stimulus checks, unemployment boosts, state and local government funding, tons of funding for vaccines, school funding, an increase to the minimum wage. Tons and tons of things are covered by this massive $1.9 trillion bill. $1.9 trillion doesn't sound like a huge monumental bill anymore because we've seen these huge numbers so many times, but it is. I mean, this would make it like the second biggest bill ever if it were to be passed. And then a group of 10 senators on Sunday sent a letter to the Biden administration outlining a $600 billion or so proposal. I think it's $618 billion that's more targeted, contains a large majority of the same things that the Biden proposal does, and then is more targeted in other ways. So let's start first with stimulus payments. So both of the proposals contain stimulus payments, which isn't a huge surprise because most voters, just about everyone in general, wants stimulus payments, it seems. So Democrats are currently in favor of giving Americans that top-up payment to $2,000. So we received the $600 about a month ago, and then we top that up by $1,400 to $2,000 in total. I know there's a lot of people who are upset because it seemed like we might receive a flat $2,000 check, but then later we were told it's more likely $1,400. Under the GOP plan, the $600 billion stimulus bill, the Republican senators want to send out $1,200 checks per individual and target those more. Dependent adults and dependent children on this, though, would receive $500 payments, which that in itself would still be monumental because dependent adults have kind of been left out many times. And depressingly, because there's so many situations where a dependent adult, could even potentially be more dependent than a dependent child could. And it's really sad to think, my heart goes out for the families who are struggling and didn't receive anything in those situations. But they also want to make their checks more targeted. The amount would begin phasing out at $40,000 for individuals and $80,000 for couples filing jointly. I'm not sure the exact number for head of household, but we can assume it's probably something like $70,000. The upper cap for individuals would be $50,000, so it would phase out from $40,000 down to $50,000. For $1,000, it would scale down. And for couples, it would phase out from $80,000 to $100,000 a year. It would scale from $1,000 to zero at $100. Under the Biden proposal, the payments are the same as the first and second round, where individuals earning less than $75,000 a year would receive that full $1,400 payment, and then that would scale down to an income of $87,000 a year for individuals. And then for couples, that is $150,000 a year, scaled down to $174,000 a year before you would receive nothing under the stimulus payment. Now, unemployment benefits, actually going back to the stimulus checks real quick, I know that's probably the area that most people are going to be frustrated about it decreasing again, because it's like we were thinking 2,000, and then we were thinking 1,400, and then it just kind of feels like, okay, what's next? Are they going to go down to $600 again? I understand the being upset there, but I'm just highlighting what exactly is going on the proposals on both sides here. So unemployment benefits under the Biden proposal, these benefits would continue after the March 14th expiration date at $400 per week until the end of September. And the GOP deal, the latest Republican $600 billion stimulus bill, would just extend unemployment at the same rate of $300 per week, and would only go through June 30th. So it wouldn't extend quite so long as the Biden proposal, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were to get passed that it would get extended again. I think they're just kind of playing it safe, and that also brings the total price of the bill down if they if they only extend it to June versus September. That is something that I wouldn't be very surprised to see change in negotiations, that the end of September deadline for the Biden bill change to something like June, because just something like that offers a similar level of relief. It just, the timeline isn't as long, so the total package size would decrease. Next, we have funding for vaccines, testing, and tracing. The Biden plan has tons of money for this. We're looking at $20 billion for a national vaccine program, $50 billion in testing, tracing, providing rapid tests, and hiring of 100,000 public health workers. I think the total spend here is between $200 and $300 billion on the Biden plan. The GOP plan, surprisingly, isn't much different. There is a lot of spending here. The Republicans' proposal calls for providing the same amount of funding to battle the pandemic. It would create that national vaccine program, expansion for testing, and a ton of hiring to administer those shots. It would also include $15 billion to replenish the national strategic stockpile that was kind of diminished earlier on this year. Now, nutrition assistance, also known as SNAP benefits. The Biden plan would extend that 15% increase in food stamp benefits through September instead of expiring in June, where it's currently set to expire. This is a great form of stimulus. If we look at research papers, we can see that increasing food assistance benefits is actually one of the best ways to stimulate the economy, likely because it's like targeted on top of being targeted. Not only is it targeted in that it goes to the lowest income earners, but it's also targeted on top of that it's being spent on food. And that helps just stimulate the economy as a whole. The GOP plan would also extend food stamp benefits through September and provide $3 billion for WIC funding. So that's very similar on both sides. Small business funding. The Biden plan provides $15 billion in new grant programs for small business owners. That's different from the Paycheck Protection Program. We don't have all the details there, but I'm excited to see what that turns into, because we have the EIDL grant program, we have the Paycheck Protection Program, we have the Shuttered Venue program. I'm wondering if this is going to be some kind of program that any business can apply to. Again, if we think back, the first EIDL grant program was only $20 billion in funding, and that got thousands of dollars to like tens of thousands of businesses. And this is $15 billion, which can still go a long way. The GOP plan would increase the Paycheck Protection Program funding, which I'm not sure is totally necessary, because I think there's actually plenty of funding there, believe it or not. And it would also put more money into the EIDL program, which could potentially be necessary. However, we still have $60 billion in unspent funds under the latest stimulus bill in December. But any additional funding there would be great, because that has the potential to open this up to more businesses who don't hit the targeted criteria. And I would really be happy to see that for small businesses. And I know that would be an extremely successful program. For school reopening, the Biden plan provides $170 billion to K through 12 schools, and $130 billion for schools to reopen. The GOP plan would provide $20 billion for K through 12 schools to get back to school. So a slight difference there. Under childcare, the Biden administration creates a $25 billion emergency fund under their proposal. The GOP plan creates a $20 billion fund under their proposal. So you can see a lot of these are pretty darn similar. And $20 billion goes a long way. Mental health services, actually the same on both. They both add $4 billion to substance abuse and mental health services administration and other related health services, both $4 billion. And then beyond this, we have a little bit more specifics. The Biden proposal provides an additional, or would provide an additional $25 billion in rental assistance. The current rental assistance funding has barely gone out at this point. It started going out last week, and I know a lot of people had some trouble finding how exactly to apply. I actually have a video that breaks down how to kind of go through that process and understanding what you need in order to apply, so you should definitely check that out if you're interested. It also would extend, the Biden program would extend the federal eviction moratorium, which is set to expire, well, I guess is set to already expire. Or no, sorry, the Biden signed an executive order to extend this through March already. So it was set to expire at the end of January through the latest stimulus bill, but then his proposal would extend that again through the end of September. In aids for states, this is, of course, an extremely hot ticket item, a hotly debated item, I should say. Biden wants to spend $350 billion on this, and we don't have any information as of right now that the Republican proposal includes anything for state and local government funding. We still have yet to get an actual bill text here. And then also, finally, the Biden proposal has the temporary increase in tax credits for children. It would create a $3,600 tax credit for children under the age of 6 and $3,000 for children between the ages of 6 and 17. So you can see the majority of things are there. I think Republicans would have a better time getting public favor with this if they were to leave the checks as targeted as they are. I think there's a lot of people who agree the lower income limits are totally fine, but I think if they bump that up to $1,400, that would increase the total bill size by about $50 billion. However, I think that would be the difference between them getting it passed and not getting it passed. Now, to finish off here, I want to play a short clip from a top Biden administration economic advisor about the targeting of the checks and just targeting the program in general. Okay, here we are.
Let me drill down on one specific, and that is something that these 10 Republicans are in favor of. So is Democrat Joe Manchin, and that is to target the stimulus checks. In fact, you talk about studies, a nonpartisan analysis found that families making over $78,000 a year barely spent the last round of stimulus checks. So are you willing to make these checks more targeted to only people who really need the help?
We want to get cash into the pockets of the families and the businesses who need it the most. That's why we have unemployment insurance extension for people who have lost their jobs through no faults of their own, why we have support for nutrition and hunger, support to avoid families being evicted from their homes and being put out on the street.
But what about
and also the
$1,400
checks.
Will you target those $1,400?
Yeah, the $1,400 checks. We're open to looking at how to make the entire package effective at achieving its objective, including providing support to families with children, providing direct child tax credits to families that have children and who have been hit the hardest in this crisis. That's certainly a place that we're willing to sit down and think about, are there ways to make the entire package more effective? I would just reinforce that we can't take on this issue without dealing with those who are unemployed. We can't take on this issue without dealing with those who are going hungry. And so as we think about the targeting, we think this plan is really targeted to provide cash into the pockets of the people who are the most in need. Certainly open to figuring out if we can make that entire package as effective as possible.
Okay, but specifically on the checks, I think I'm hearing you say that that is a place you're willing to negotiate to make them more targeted to the people who need them most and not go to people who aren't going to spend them.
We're open to that idea. We're open to ideas across the board.
So that's the general gist. I just thought that was important to highlight that their openness to paring down these checks and making them more targeted. I think the fact that they're openly saying we are willing to negotiate here and send them only to those most in need. We might see something similar to the limits we're seeing in that Republican proposal, but I think the fact that they're mentioning it means the likelihood of that happening is fairly high, because paring down the checks even to that $50,000 limit for individuals and the lower limit for couples as well would save something like $200 billion on a stimulus package. So that might be the difference between getting a deal done and not. I think that's fairly likely. And judging by talking about this last week, I think there's a lot of people all for paring those down if it means getting the checks passed. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think the pared down checks are a good idea if it means just getting the darn thing passed? So that's going to do it for today. I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.